Responsible for Women, Minister Bathabile Dlamini, has called on society to join hands in combating the scourge of gender-based violence and violence against children. She was addressing the media Saturday, kickstarting the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Sunday, November the 25th, marks the beginning of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. The initiative is an international campaign to challenge violence, or rather to challenge violence against women and girls. It goes on yearly from the 25th of November, the International Day of the Elimination of Violence Against Women, to the 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day.
Together and across all sectors, we must unite in the spirit of Tumamina towards the total eradication of all forms of violence against women. And unity is about mina, nawe, you and me. As the calendar term of the annual 16 days of activism against gender-based violence approaches from 25 November to 10 December, women's movement, mobilization and activism has remained as one of the strengths of unity in action by women's organizations and those that work with women. It is only when we unite across race, class, ethnic backgrounds, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, and political parties that we can achieve the end goal of total emancipation of women. Our history of activism shows us that it was only when women were united across multiple subjective backgrounds that our struggles were advanced. We all know that in 1956, it was because women women were able to dismantle barriers that divided them and united towards a common goal. And the march bore substantive gains. Again, the institutional mechanism of the national gender machinery was a direct result of women's unity in struggle during CODESA negotiations and with the National Women's Coalition at the center. Likewise, women's gains during the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Summit earlier this month is a more recent testament that is a show of power. And as the department, we want to acknowledge the summit and the outcomes of the summit. And the department is focusing on the outcomes of the summit so as to ensure that there is implementation. And it is important for us to mention that we are working with other departments as well as civil society organizations. Amongst others, the GBV and the summit resolved that political and community leadership must support and champion the cause of eradicating gender-based violence and femicide. The summit also resolved that political, community, family, and business leadership must be held accountable. Critically, the summit resolved for society to collectively develop and implement a targeted social behavior change program to address patriarchal values and norms and other structural drivers of gender-based violence. We call upon all the leaders of our country and different sectors to buy into the cause for the emancipation of women and the fight against violence violence against women. We call upon all South Africans to heed the United Nations theme, #HearMeToo, by breaking all forms of silence against all manners of abuses and violence against women. The #HearMeToo theme symbolizes a collective appeal to society to hear women's pain and demands against gender-based violence. #HearMeToo is also a call to action to all victims, survivors, witnesses, and all other affected to continue to speak up in any manner about or against violence perpetrated against ourselves, our loved ones, those in our care, or a stranger. It is only when we collectively speak against the scourge that we can hope to completely end it. We are bringing attention to this year's #HearMeToo theme through the robot against gender-based violence. The robot is an instant and critical determinant between healthy and unhealthy relationships. The robot is about protection and safety. It is about taking precautionary measures, asking for help, and leaving a destructive relationship. We urge all women's organizations across the country, all community activists, academics, public servants, and concerned community members to consolidate their calendars for the 16 days of activism. They must populate their diaries widely so that we can collectively contribute to sustaining the momentum of women's struggles. We also urge women's organizations to continue to build and sustain indicators so that the state does not rely on the indicators of the police department alone. We need to have the true reflection of violence against women in our country. And therefore, we must have information that is reported to NGOs so that we have the total number, so that we make sense in the hearts of all those who think that violence is not high in South Africa. We acknowledge that the national gender machinery in government cannot shift public policy agendas for women without the participation of organizations of civil society. Financing and resourcing of programs against gender-based violence is central to the achievement of our efforts. The Department of Women is leading policy advocacy for gender-responsive budgeting across all sectors. We therefore urge all members of society to consider how each of us will use their finances to contribute to women's empowerment and gender equality. The Ministry of Women has invited all pillars of the state to strengthen national efforts towards a South Africa that is free of all forms of discrimination on the basis of sex, gender, and sexual orientation. The Department of Women will be launching 16 Days of Activism campaign on Sunday, 25 November 2018 at Wanzimela Anglican Church, Wamagwaza, in Melmoth, in King Cetshwayo District. Our calendar of events for the period include strategic dialogue sessions with boys and men, discussions with women traditional leaders, have commemorations of those who played an important role in the struggle for women's emancipation, like Charlotte Maxege, as well as Mama Albertina Sisulu, we are celebrating this year. We will also hold discussions with the LGBTIQA+ community and launch the public hearings against all forms of gender abuses in the guise of religion and faith. Government opened a gender-based violence command center where victims of violence and those who want to speak up against a violence can call social workers. It's a 24-hour service, but also we call all civil society organizations that work with the issues focusing on advocacy, support, and many other programs that are focusing on women as well as empowerment of women, to submit their contact numbers, and we will put their numbers in our website so that it's easy for our people to access everyone who is closer to where they stay.